Next up, we were talking about the different aspects of the problem. One of the biggest problems is, this is really the choir. Everybody here knows about the degree of problems. That's why you're all here. The problem is getting the word out to everybody else in the community. And our next portion of the program is to honor somebody who did that. And before we get there, I have somebody who's going to introduce our honoree this morning. Laurie King is the Director of Learning and Communications at the Maricopa County Education Service Agency, MCESA. I got to get that down, MCESA. 20 years as an Arizona educator. She's focused on innovative strategies to inspire and engage students and teachers. She's been working at MCESA since 2010. She's got a nice biography, but the thing that impressed me the most in this biography is that not just that she's a foster parent, but she's an adoptive mother of 8. You can all go, go ahead, a little awe there. Please welcome Laurie King.
Good morning. As the Director of Communications at MCESA, I have almost a daily run-in with terror with Dr. Covey. As you know, he loves to give tests. And his favorite test for me is, did you read the paper today? Now, as you hear, I don't have a lot of time in the morning with all the children in my house to sit and read the coffee and drink the coffee and read the paper. So I also, oh, by the way, the paper is the Arizona Republic. I mean, that just so you know. And the paper's got a lot of stuff in it, so I have to make sure I look through the paper and know how to answer this test, because it's serious, right? Well, last summer, I was really glad I had stopped for coffee, because at my favorite coffee shop, the Republic was folded in half up by the cash register, and on the above the fold, I think they call it, was a story about disconnected youth. No jobs, no school, no direction, it said. And I had perused it as I was waiting for my coffee. And so I actually knew this was going to be a really serious thing, because when Don says, have you read the paper, he usually just asks that question. This day, he brought the paper in. And he said, have you seen this article? And fortunately, I had. And he brought this to our leadership team. Have you seen this article? You hadn't seen the article. You probably can't see it back there. I get the paper on my iPad. It looked like this. Had a picture of this good-looking young man on the front playing a video game, and it says, no jobs, no school, no direction. And it goes on to report sobering and terrifying statistics about our community, about our country, but about our community. About the kids that we as educators dig in every day to connect with and make room for and do incredible things, who aren't connecting. And kids who are finding connections in other places because we aren't doing a good enough job of providing it for them. And Don was passionate, and he was serious about this topic and how we needed to dig in, and we needed to look at ourselves about how we could affect this topic, but also what we could do with the community. And so we read the article, and we read it again, and we read it again, and it was an incredible article. And we knew that, as in all of our discussions, our hero for bringing us this topic was Mr. Eugene Scott. Mr. Eugene Scott is the reporter from the Republic that wrote this story, who did the research on what Measure America had reported and then dug into how it affects our community. He met this young man and in the article and brought him to us. And this article became our Bible for this event today. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't pause and meet Eugene Scott and talk to him, because if it wasn't for this article, we wouldn't be here today discussing this really important project. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Mr. Eugene Scott, and we'll have a seat over here. Good morning.
Good morning.
I follow you on Twitter.
Awesome.
I've been doing that for a while, since you became my favorite reporter.
I guess now you can tell that photo's airbrushed.
Yeah. No, but I saw already on Twitter this morning that you are tweeting about the event. And
Yes, people are up early, and I mean, those of you who are very active on Twitter realize that people back east have been up. So.
Oh yeah, that's right. There are other people out there. Well, the media is incredibly powerful. People read it, watch it, hear it, respond to it. I hear that we actually have folks in the audience today because there was a news story about this event this morning on Channel 5, which you don't have to acknowledge that.
I only watch Channel 12.
Okay. Good. That'll be a good sound clip. And so that's really exciting. And so I wanted to talk to you a little today about this article, and it's, the non-reporter interviewing the reporter is a little uncomfortable, so I wrote my things down on my iPad here. So,
Great, no problem.
So what inspired you to write this article?
I probably get, I'm sure I get hundreds of emails a week just from across the country from organizations pitching story ideas. And this article actually came out nearly a year after the report was published. And it just kept resurfacing as an issue, one that I thought was very important. Trying to decipher what is news and what's most urgent is probably one of the biggest challenges for journalists. And it became very clear that this was an issue that not just affected some people in Phoenix, but everyone. And it took a while to make that clear and to figure out how best to communicate that. But when it was clear that this was an issue that was not a South Phoenix issue or an inner city issue, but a valley-wide issue, it was pretty obvious from that point that it needed to be told.
Great. So as you were researching the topic, what surprised you?
I think just that it was Phoenix. Like, no one thinks that their city is the worst at anything. And I mean, I think everyone here in Phoenix knew that we have education challenges here. But I remember sitting with two friends of mine who are well-educated lawyers, and they're about my age, and they still don't believe it, which was kind of uncomfortable for me. But when you're in the media, you get used to the attacks. But everyone thinks Detroit is worse, or DC is worse, or New York is worse. No one believes that our problem is as bad as it is. And to be fair to them, part of that is because I've lived in a few places, and Phoenix, unlike many of those places, to me, from my experience, really operates in bubbles. And so there are people who live, work, and play in Arcadia and never go south of Indian School except for a game. And so they know no one who has dropped out of college, much less high school. And so it was very easy for them to believe that this just was not the reality.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. As we were discussing this on our planning committee, I think that question came up of who are the kids and where are these kids, and do we know these kids? And some of us do. Some of us have more experience with that than others, but you're right. It is. I think that was what was so incredibly important about that article, is to open our eyes to the broader community. Yeah. You interacted with a lot of people when you wrote this article. There's some great statistics you were able to uncover. What most impacted you with the people you met and the stories you heard?
I think the reality of their stories. I think it's really easy to reduce people to names in the paper, but these are real people, and when you're sitting with them and hearing their stories in their homes, you realize that this is real. This is actually happening, and I think there were two things that really impacted me, specifically about Jalil and just some other kids I spoke with in South Phoenix. I grew up in Washington, D.C., in the actual city, and we do not have community colleges, so I'm still very fascinated by the concept. But from what I've learned and what I've covered, I mean, philosophically, the purpose of community colleges is to make higher education accessible to the masses. And to see people who live literally walking distance from community colleges, but still be so disconnected. I mean, South Mountain Community College has multiple programs to help you finish high school, to get an associate's, and to transition into college. and there are people blocks from it who don't feel, for whatever reason, that that's within reach for them. And so that was a shock to me, because I think when we tend to think about underserved communities, we sometimes think they aren't being served at all, but the reality is there are services there, and they're just underserved, but even the services there seem not to reach all of the people there. And I think that really impacted me deeply. And I think lastly, as I said, I'm from DC, and I went to DC public schools. So I was in inner city schools my entire life, and the issues of inner city schools are not new issues. And so, I know DC public schools have had challenges since at least the 1970s. And so to see us still talking about some of these things was just a shock. It was just a shock. I certainly know people who did not go to college or finish college, but quite frankly, it wasn't until I became a journalist that I realized just how many people were still dropping out of high school. I just didn't realize that. I thought it was very clear up until that point that you, at the very least, needed a high school diploma. But to realize that message isn't getting to everyone was very surprising.
In your article, you included several recommendations for reversing the trend. Can you speak to what you now believe are important strategies for reconnecting the disconnected?
I don't know how much of a strategy this is, but like getting rid of denial is the first step. I mean, we cannot even address an issue if we don't acknowledge an issue exists. I have no medical training, but from what I understand, you have to acknowledge that you're sick before you can get treated. And so when people, particularly people in positions of influence, like attorneys that I've spoken with, say that this problem isn't real, then nothing is happening. At least if you can acknowledge the problem, at least the debate can be about how best to go about it. But the number one strategy, I think, is acknowledging that this actually exists. I have a story coming out Friday. I was at Loyola Academy yesterday. You may or may not know that Brophy College Prep started a middle school for high-achieving, low-income boys. And they will graduate their first class next week, and then they'll go into Brophy. And I was talking to them, sat down, I interviewed another gentleman who, just incredibly impressive kid, way smarter than I am in math, which is why I'm a writer, I guess. But just realizing, you have an institution, an incredibly wealthy institution like Brophy, that acknowledges, hey, this is our responsibility. We're going to pay for this some way or not. We can pay for it at the front end, or we can pay for it later.
So that is a strategy of perhaps a prevention strategy. Sure. So today we are looking at and talking about prevention strategies as well as things we can do to reconnect those that have already been disconnected. If you think about the numbers of kids that are currently out there that didn't have the great opportunities to connect in with Loyola or other opportunities, how do we get them into the community college? How do we even reach them where they are?
I think a great way to reconnect that other school districts can model, just a quick shout out to the Phoenix Union School District, which high school district, which I write about most and therefore am most familiar with, is acknowledging that times have changed. So when I was in high school, school started at about 8, it ended at 3, and that's when you went, and if you didn't go then, you couldn't go. And so writing this story, I discovered, I didn't know until writing this story that Phoenix Union offers online high school night classes and Saturday classes. The reality is some kids cannot go to school from 8 to 3, period. They're the breadwinners in their family. They're taking care of their kids or siblings. There are just other issues that make going to school during the day difficult. And so those of us who are very traditional in our mindset in terms of what education looks like need to get rid of that, because the reality of the situation is that system does not work for everyone. So I think realizing that people are already disconnected but could be reconnected if we alter how we go about doing things is a great way to reconnect.
Great, and I think we'll hear more about that today, so thanks for bringing that up. So as you were writing this article and getting ready to submit it, what were you hoping the impact would be?
I think I just wanted people to care.
I know. It's already awkward just being interviewed, period. But I know what it's like to be reduced to a statistic. And I know Jaleel, who's doing fine now, is a human being who did not choose to be born into a family with a dead mother and an absentee father. And we have so many systems and philosophies in place that would completely blame him for his lack of success. And yeah, and just see him as another problem. And it's just not true. And so he's doing well in a charter school and playing football, and because he wanted to do well, he just didn't know how. And I think we take for granted. I remember asking him. The gentleman was talking about homelessness earlier, and I did a story a couple months ago on Phoenix opening its first homeless shelter for millennials, and affiliated with the Tumbleweed Center. And millennials are actually one of the fastest growing demographics of the homeless population. And I remember just sitting down with this guy, just baffled, being like, what do you mean you're homeless and you're 22? That doesn't even make sense. And he's like, well, you know, the house you lived in that you didn't pay rent for with your parents, they can legally kick you out. And that's what happened. I was 16 years old. My mom had a substance abuse problem and didn't value me and kicked me out. And I was homeless. I had no degree. I had no education. And so just the same, just realizing that these people that we do life with that are in our environment are just more than stats.
Well, I hope you can look out today and see all of these people here. These people are here today because of you, and they're here because we care, and we are committed to doing something about it. And so I also hope that for every single one of us in the work that we do, we get an opportunity like Eugene gets today to see the impact of their work on a community and what you have done for us. And it's time for us to thank you for
I
that.
appreciate that. Thank you.
And for your work, we would like to present you with this plaque that says, MCESA recognizes Eugene Scott for outstanding investigative research and reporting of Metro Phoenix disconnected youth. And we have the image of your article here, and you can hang this where you wish and show your boss that, you know, look at that, look what I got.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eugene.
Thank you so much.